He's a seventh-generation entrepreneur, the New York Times best-selling author of 6 books, and the creator of 5 multi-million-dollar companies. He's the founder of Convince and Convert, a global marketing and customer experience consulting firm that works with the world's most iconic brands like Hilton, Oracle, and the United Nations. He's a Hall of Fame keynote speaker that helps audiences grow their businesses by combining marketing and customer empathy. Plus, he's an avid tequila collector and certified barbecue judge. Hang on to your seats. Here comes Jay Baer.
How you doing? Morning, G2E. The one thing that video didn't mention is that I am deceptively youthful looking. It could be the fancy lighting here, but I've been doing this a long time. So long that when I started in the online marketing business, domain names were free. So you could get whatever .com, .net, .org, .uk, .whatever for nothing. Because who would want a website? What would you possibly do with a website? And in 1993, my partners and I, in my very first internet company, we sold Budweiser.com to Anheuser-Busch Brewing for 50 cases of beer. That's a true story, and we really thought that we got such a good deal. We were so convinced. And a little bit longer after that, I went on vacation. I was so excited, went on vacation. And while I was gone, my partner registered some other domain names without me, so my name was not on the paperwork. One of those, beer.com, he sold for $5.1 million. And he never worked a day after that. And I'm here with you at G2E. So that's how that worked out. None of that was in the bio video, as you saw. But I'll tell you the one thing I know is that every single one of us wants to grow our business. That's why we're here. Right? That's why we're at G2E. We all want to grow our business. But one of the things that I found in this long, many, many years I've been doing this is that when we're in business, we tend to reach a level and then we kind of plateau. And then we have to get to the next level. And to get to that next level, we, in many cases, rely on advertising. But advertising can be difficult, and it certainly can be expensive. And you all know that as well as anybody. So what is really true about this is that the best way to grow your business, the best way to grow anybody's business here, is not necessarily to spend money on it. It's to have your customers, your guests, your players grow your business for you. Now, I live now in Bloomington, Indiana, in the Midwest here, and 91 miles south of my home is a town called Santa Claus, Indiana. It's actually called Santa Claus, Indiana. There are 4 things in Santa Claus, Indiana. 3 of those things are corn, and the 4th one is Holiday World and Splash and Safari, which is a family-owned water park and amusement park. Now, they have several strategic disadvantages. First, in the middle of nowhere, and I can't emphasize that to you enough, truly in the middle of nowhere. Second, family-owned, so they don't have a tremendous amount of budget to advertise their way to that next level of success. And third, because they're independent, they don't have any characters. They don't have Mickey Mouse or Spider-Man or Pac-Man or Wheel of Fortune, or apparently there's an Adam Levine slot machine game now that I didn't know about. That guy's everywhere. They don't have any of that. What they have is Christmas Land and Thanksgiving Land and the very spooky Halloween Land. But what they do have is an unbelievably sharp understanding of how to turn guests into volunteer marketers. They do it 2 ways. First, when you go to Holiday World and Splash and Safari, you walk in, you pay your money, you go through the turnstile. The first thing you see is a little hut, like a small building. And you think, oh, perhaps that's a restroom, although that's a very abrupt place to put one. You look closer and realize it's not a restroom. It is a free sunscreen station. Unlimited supplies of what I presume to be the cheapest possible sunscreen. It's North Korean surplus sunscreen, but the price is right, and they give it away for free. And if you've never seen people apply sunscreen 2 handfuls at a time, it's kind of gross. People are, it's very shiny there. And then when you go in a little further, you see a slightly larger hut, and you think, oh, well, this one must be a restroom. Also not a restroom. It is a free soft drink and soda station. Now, of course, in the gaming industry, we give people free drinks all the time. In the amusement park industry, that's crazy. If you've ever been to an amusement park anywhere in the world in the last 2 years, you will know that the average retail price of a soft drink is $16. It's incredible. They give it away for free. Now, does that cost them some revenue on the top end? Of course it does. But what it gains them is so much more important. Because the number 1 amusement park in the United States in average TripAdvisor rating, tripadvisor.com, a site I'm sure many of you are familiar with, the number 1 amusement park is not Disney or Universal Studios or any of the large corporate-owned parks. It is the family-owned Holiday World and Splash and Safari in Santa Claus, Indiana. And they have thousands of 5-star reviews. And if you take any reviews, take a review from a month ago, 6 years ago, it doesn't matter, every single 5-star review mentions free sunscreen and free soft drinks. See, what Holiday World has done is they have given their customers a consistent story to tell about the experience of being there. And that's something that we all can do, and we all must do if we want to turn our players into volunteer marketers. And this is more important than it's ever been because people have the power now. We trust each other more than ever, and we trust companies and governments less than ever. So when somebody you know, or even somebody you don't know well, makes a recommendation, customers and consumers pay attention, disproportionately so. Happens right here in the city of Las Vegas. There are, by my count, 16,214 magicians in Las Vegas. Pretty much every other person is a magician in Vegas, is how I calculate it. And they all have their act, of course, but there's one magic act, Penn and Teller, that gives their guests a consistent story to tell. And the story isn't about magic. It's about something else. You see, every single performance that Penn and Teller have ever given for 42 consecutive years, after the show, they go out to the lobby and they shake hands and take photos and sign autographs with every single audience member until the last person gets tired and leaves. Every night for 42 years, until June 29th of this year, when Teller injured his back and was unable to do the meet and greet. Now, there are a number of other magicians here, as I mentioned, and many of them will have you sign an autograph if you pay an extra $100. That's not a story that people will pass along. But this is, and if you go to the internet, if you go to social media, and you search Penn and Teller autograph, you will see photos, videos, blog posts, poems, songs created about this interaction that their guests can have with the great Penn and Teller. They give their guests a story to tell. Right here on TripAdvisor, great show. Penn and Teller put on a great show. The combination of magic and comedy is what really sets them apart from other magicians. I also loved that they stuck around after the show for a meet and greet. I will, of course, do the exact same thing right in that hole after today's event. Word of mouth is incredibly important, but I'm not sure we all know just how important it is. Let's do a little word of mouth quiz, shall we? What percent of all purchases are primarily caused by word of mouth? 30%, 40%, or 50%? Let's hear it. Let's hear it from the audience. 30, 40, or 50? 40, 40, 40. What do you guys in the middle say? 50 over here. The answer is 50%. Half of all purchases are primarily driven by word of mouth. Second question. What percent of consumers make at least one word of mouth recommendation every month? 35, 45, or 55%? How about over here? 5, you guys? A little louder on this side. You guys? This is a good participation group over here. You guys not so much. The answer is 55%. More than half of all consumers make at least one word-of-mouth recommendation every month. Now, we all know in this industry that millennials prefer skill-based games. There's been a tremendous amount of research about this. There's a lot of exhibitors here that would be happy to talk to you about the impact of skill-based games. So millennials like this kind of interaction. But millennials also are much more likely to engage in word-of-mouth recommendations compared to other demographic groups. How much so? What percent do you think of millennials make at least one word-of-mouth recommendation monthly? We just learned a slide ago that it's 55% for everybody. How many for millennials? Yeah, you nailed it. 77% of millennials. 55% for everybody, 77% for millennials. They will tell your story. They will, if you give them a story to tell. Here's the amazing thing, okay? We just talked about how important word of mouth is. We all know it's important. No one's going to come up here and argue with me that word of mouth isn't important. But here's the thing. Nobody in this room has a word of mouth strategy. Nobody. You probably have a marketing strategy. You might have a public relations strategy. You might have a digital marketing strategy, a social media marketing strategy, a hiring and recruiting strategy, a crisis management strategy. We have a whole desk full of strategies, except for the one that really matters, which is word of mouth, which drives more players than any other thing that you're doing. We just take it for granted. We just assume that our players and our customers will talk about us. We just assume that if we run a good business, they'll tell our story. But will they? And what will they say? So what I want to talk about this morning is to help you find a way to do word of mouth on purpose instead of what we're doing now, which is doing word of mouth on accident. On accident. How many of you have ever been to the Cheesecake Factory restaurant? Okay, a number of people. Some are not from here, but I will tell you this. It's quite an experience. They give their customers a consistent story to tell. Did you know that the Cheesecake Factory spends 5 times less, 5 times, not 5%, 5 times less on advertising than any other chain in their competitive set? Imagine if you spent 5 times less on advertising than other gaming corporations in your region. Imagine what that would do for your bottom line. How are they able to do this? How are they able to succeed despite not spending any money? This is how. This is how. My daughter said her English class requires 1,000 pages of summer reading, so we went to the Cheesecake Factory and I handed her the menu. Many of you have buffets that include a lot of items. Imagine that, but on a menu. That's the Cheesecake Factory. I had my intern permanently borrow a Cheesecake Factory menu, and I had her count the words. 5,940 words on a Cheesecake Factory menu. The new book I just wrote is 53,000 words. So the Cheesecake Factory is 13% of a book. The worst place on the planet to be a waiter or a waitress, because you come to the table. Are you ready to order? We are not. We are definitely not ready to order. Cheesecake Factory makes, and this is an unbelievably true stat, 85 different chicken dishes in one restaurant. 85. That's absurd. Nobody here can name more than 20. 85 does not make any sense. But this giant menu, where they will make food out of anything, is the story that their customers tell over and over and over to one another. I know this because for the new book, my co-author and I interviewed hundreds of Cheesecake Factory customers, and it turns out that 38% of them have actually told somebody else about the menu in the prior 30 days. This is why Cheesecake Factory doesn't spend any money on ads, because the giant menu is the ad, and their customers are the marketing. We all can do this. We all should do this. What the giant menu is a talk trigger. And a talk trigger is a strategic, operational choice, a differentiator that compels word of mouth. It's something that you choose to do differently in your business that creates conversations over and over. Now, I think it's important to recognize that a talk trigger isn't marketing. Not really. It's not a price. It's not a slot tournament. It's not a campaign. It's not a contest. It's not a magician. It's an operational decision that creates a marketing advantage. But it's not marketing, not in the classic sense. It's something that you do different, not something that you say different. So that's the new book. You can't miss it because it has alpacas on the cover, which is unusual for a business book for sure. In the book, we talk about the 4 requirements of a talk trigger. The 4 things that your differentiator must have to pay off every single day in word-of-mouth recommendations about your business. And the first of these ingredients is that your talk trigger, your differentiator, must be remarkable. Remarkable. In the actual definition of that word, which is worthy of remark. It has to be a story worth telling, you see. Because one of the things we do in business, and I would say particularly in this industry, is play follow the leader. We figure out who's doing well, and we see what's their secret sauce, and we try to copy that sauce. Oh, these guys have a Mexican food restaurant on the strip. Well, we're all going to have a Mexican food restaurant on the strip. These guys have a gourmet burger place. We're all going to have a gourmet burger place. We play follow the leader. But that never really works, does it? Because if you're just copying somebody else's thing, you'll never be anything other than second best. It's not possible to do that. When it comes to word of mouth, same is lame. Because if your consumers and your players have seen it before, it's not a story they want to tell. It's not an interesting story. So we have to have the courage to do something different. And some of this is just how we're wired as people. We are wired physiologically as human beings to discuss things that are different and ignore things that are average. I don't know everybody here. I do know some of you. But I know this for a fact. Nobody here has ever said, hey, let me tell you about this perfectly adequate experience I just had. We never say that. Why? Because that's a terrible story. Nobody wants to hear that story. So your talk trigger has to be remarkable in some way. Stop playing follow the leader. This is why Absinthe is so popular. Is it objectively a better show than any other show in Vegas? I don't know, probably not. But it's successful because it is manifestly different in every way than other shows that it competes against. This does not play follow the leader in any way, shape, or form. It is different, and it is talkable as a result. The second thing your talk trigger must be is repeatable, meaning that every player, every guest has an opportunity to access it. Today in business, we are addicted to the notion of surprise and delight. This, of course, is a circumstance where you take one customer in a particular scenario and you treat them different, better than other customers. This idea essentially started in this industry. Surprise and delight and tiered customer experiences started in the airlines industry and with the Harrah's loyalty program. That's where it began. And I certainly understand the desire to have a loyalty program, to have a card, to have points, to say you get diamond check-in, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it probably works from a customer retention standpoint, but it doesn't necessarily work from a word-of-mouth standpoint. Because when you treat one customer differently, the other customers say, well, how come I don't get that experience? It can actually create contempt, not conversation. And I'm not suggesting you don't do that. I'm just suggesting that a loyalty program is not a word-of-mouth strategy. It's a retention strategy. It's a player retention strategy, not the same thing. So we want our talk triggers to be available to every player, every guest, every time. It doesn't have to be hard. It just has to be consistent. There's a restaurant in Sacramento, California called Skip's Kitchen. Skip's is a very simple restaurant, counter service. You walk up, you place your order on the menu board. I want 2 patty melts, I want an onion rings, and I want a chocolate shake. And when your food is ready, they bring it to your table. Everybody knows how that works, no big deal. But Skip's has an incredible talk trigger. Here's how it works. So you place your order, and you're at the counter, see? And then the person at the counter says, before you give money, before you swipe your card or cash, they say, let's play a game. Oh, what? Okay. What kind of patty melt game are you talking about? And they pull out a deck of cards from under the counter. They fan the cards out face down in front of you. And they say, pick a card. And you pick a card, and if you get a joker, your entire meal is free, whether you've ordered for just yourself or an entire group of friends. Skip's Kitchen has been in business for 10 years. They have never spent a single penny on advertising ever. Yet, there's a line to get in almost every day. They were just named the 29th best hamburger restaurant in America by USA Today newspaper. On average, about 3 people a day win this Joker game. And when they win, they go batshit crazy. They're taking patty melt selfies, and they're putting posts on social media, and they're calling their mom crying, and a high school marching band shows up. It's like a whole thing. It's so powerful that in Sacramento, despite the fact that quite obviously there's a giant sign that says Skip's Kitchen, big neon sign that says Skip's Kitchen. People in Sacramento call it that Joker restaurant. That's when you know you have a story that people want to tell over and over and over. Restaurants, huge part of this game. When choosing a restaurant, millennials and Gen Z, your current and future core audiences, are 99% more likely to rely on social media and reviews than Gen X and boomers. Massive driver of business. The third thing that your talk trigger must be is it must be reasonable. And the one thing we're not great at in this industry is reasonable. We default to unreasonable and extraordinary and extreme and crazy and wild. And that's okay, but that's not a word-of-mouth strategy either. When you give your players, your guests, experiences that are too grand, it actually creates suspicion, not conversation. And we do this all the time in gaming, don't we? We're like, okay, swipe your card, and one of you this month is gonna win a Tahitian island. And people are like, wait, what? They don't have an island to give away. Well, maybe they do, but I don't think that's gonna happen. It just feels bogus. If I say to you, you get a car, and you get a car, and you get a car, and you get a car, who says that? Oprah. Who else can say that? Nopra. Nopra is the answer. Nobody else can get away with it. I can't get away with it, and you definitely can't get away with it. It doesn't work. We're so driven by, well, you know what, it's hard to break through, and customers tune us out, and it's competitive, so let's just go bigger. It doesn't work because people don't believe it. It creates suspicion. What they're talking about are the rules and the terms and conditions and the fact that nobody is going to win that Miata that's on top of that slot machine. It doesn't work. They're not talkable. Just by showing you this picture, who can tell me what hotel chain I'm talking about? Anybody? Doubletree, thank you. Doubletree Hotels by Hilton. Doubletree Hotels by Hilton gives each guest a warm chocolate chip cookie baked right there when they check in, and they've done it every single day for 30 years. Today, as we sit here, Doubletree by Hilton will hand out 75,000 of these cookies today. 75,000 cookies a day. Now, I talked to hundreds of Doubletree customers when I did the research for the new book, and we discovered that 34% of them have mentioned that cookie to somebody else in the prior 30 days. That's more than 25,000 people a day telling somebody else about this cookie. Companion question, when's the last time you saw an ad for Doubletree? Probably been a while, because the cookie is the ad and the guests are the marketing. You may have heard this saying that advertising is a tax paid by the unremarkable. Now, I wouldn't suggest that's entirely true, but it's definitely partially true. And when you go on social media, if you do a search for Doubletree plus cookie, you will see dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of people talking about the cookie, taking pictures of the cookie, shooting videos of the cookie, including this one from Kentucky Diane. This is on Twitter. Her handle here is Kentucky Diane. She says, "These are the best cookies in the world," which they're not. I mean, look, okay, it's a good cookie. It's maybe the best cookie I've ever been given by a hotel, but best cookie in the world, no way. Then she says, "I try to always stay at Doubletree just to get them." Let's analyze this together, shall we? Here's a person who is sharp enough to create a Twitter account. She is smart enough to spell all the words right on Twitter, which is no given. She even uses correct punctuation, and she even used the second capital T in Doubletree. I think we can agree, can we not, that Kentucky Diane is smarter than the average consumer. Yet, by her own admission, Kentucky Diane is selecting a hotel based on a chocolate chip cookie. I don't know about you, but when I'm picking a hotel, I'm thinking location, or do they have a casino, or do they have a restaurant, or a comfy bed, or free cable, or a gym? She's picking a hotel based on a chocolate chip cookie, which is both amazing and also a little sad. But it shows you the power of a talk trigger. But remember this, it's just a cookie. It's not an island. It's not win a car. It's not a free room night. It's a chocolate chip cookie. So don't fool yourself into thinking that what we need to create conversation is some crazy stunt. You don't have to hire an elephant to walk through your gaming floor. Just do one thing your customers don't expect, do it well, and do it every time, every single time. According to the Journal of Hospitality and Tourism Research, for casinos, trust is the #1 factor in word-of-mouth generation, which is another reason why we don't want to make this word-of-mouth idea too big, because when it's too big, it erodes trust. This is one area where smaller is actually better. The fourth thing that your talk trigger must be is it must be relevant. It has to make sense. When it makes sense, the story gets told more often. This is Jay Sofer. Jay is a locksmith in New York City, fixes locks. He is the highest rated locksmith in New York City. He's also one of the highest rated businesses in New York City of any kind, which is quite a hurdle to clear. He also, I think you'll agree, has probably the best hair of any locksmith I've seen. I mean, this is like if some sort of movie star also became a locksmith. His talk trigger is not the hair, although maybe he could do it that way. His talk trigger works like this. He fixes your locks, installs new locks, whatever it is he's going to do. And then he does a security audit of your entire home for free. And then he oils every lock in your house, window and door, for free. So effective is this talk trigger that this is an actual review of Jay Sofer on Yelp. I almost want to get locked out again. My experience was that great. That's a strong testimonial, I think you'll agree. This talk trigger makes sense, though. It is contextually relevant, which is what makes it powerful. He's a locksmith that does a security audit and oils the locks. You're like, okay, I can understand that. When we develop these kind of talk triggers, my consulting firm and I, we do this kind of work all over the world, and we help brands and businesses and organizations figure out and implement their talk triggers. When we do this kind of work, we actually have a test. And the test is we tell the talk trigger to a child. I have a number of people on my team who have kids who are between like 8 and 11 years old, and we tell it to a child, and then we have the child tell the story. And if they can tell it, we know it's simple enough to work as a talk trigger. It has to make sense. Locksmith oils your locks. Now, imagine the last 2 stories I've told you were flipped, however. Imagine this scenario. Jay Sofer fixes your locks and then says, hey, would you like a warm chocolate chip cookie I made in my locksmith van? You're like, no, I definitely don't want that. I don't want a locksmith cookie. Or imagine Doubletree says, you check into the hotel, and Doubletree says, before you get to your room, would you like us to do a security audit? You'd say, is that a thing that's necessary? Because perhaps I am in the wrong location. It has to make sense. It has to make sense in the context of who you are and what your particular establishment stands for. You see, Hilton has 14 brands in their portfolio. Doubletree is just one of the 14. But the Doubletree brand positioning is the warm welcome. That's their thing. They spend a lot of time and money on the guest experience from the time you walk into the hotel until the 8 or 9 minutes later when you walk into your room. That gap of time, they want to own that. They want to be the best at that. So they spend a lot of time and money on lobby design. They do a lot of training of front desk personnel. And the cookie ceremony, and it is a ceremony because they grab it and then they hand it to you. It's not a pile of cookies on a desk. It's like a Japanese tea ceremony, but unhealthy because it's an American company. So it's part of the warm welcome. The cookie is even warm, you see. It all makes sense, and your talk trigger has to as well. It has to be relevant. I've told you about the 4 types of talk triggers. There are different types of talk triggers as well that I want to share with you. And the first one is the one we see most often. It's the most commonly executed because it's the easiest to build into your operations in your business. And it's talkable generosity. Many of the examples I've told you are talkable generosity. Free sunscreen is talkable generosity. Free cookie is talkable generosity. Security audit of your locks is talkable generosity. It's when you do something more generous than your players expect. Doesn't have to be hard, though. I learned this story the other day. I was in Seattle doing a presentation. A guy came up to me afterwards and said, "Jay, have you heard of this talk trigger?" I said, "I don't think so. I don't think I know any from Seattle." He said, "There's a doctor here. He's a vasectomy surgeon. He only does the vasectomy procedure. And his name is Dr. Snip." And I said, "That's incredible. That is a coincidence." And he said, "No, that's not the talk trigger." It gets even better. Every single patient on the way out the door receives an engraved silver pocket knife that says, "Dr. Snip Vasectomy Clinic." Now, you can imagine the scenario, right? You're with your boys, you got friends, you're playing some golf, or you're at the casino, you're on your boat, you're watching some sports, and you open a beer, and your buddy's like, "Man, that's a sweet knife. Where'd you get it?" "Where'd I get it?" "I got this knife from Dr. Snip." All the guys in the room are like, "Wow." And all the ladies are like, "Yeah, go to Dr. Snip." Second type of talk trigger is talkable responsiveness. This is when you are faster and more on top of it than your guests expect. Doesn't usually happen in this industry because every single time the front desk tells me that they will send me a text message when my room is ready, that text message never comes. It's a huge opportunity for all of us. Sometimes we fail in this quest. 2 years ago, Amanda goes on Twitter and says, "Guys, I'm trapped in an Amtrak elevator." Amtrak is the American train system, if anybody's unfamiliar. "I'm trapped in an Amtrak elevator at BWI was Baltimore, in Baltimore's airport. I'm trapped in an elevator, an Amtrak elevator in Baltimore's airport. Help." Now, the last word of this tweet is clearly help. We're all on the same page there, right? 205 days later, I can't make this up, guys. That's not fast enough, clearly. If any of you have ever wondered, hey, I'm sure we got social media people working for us, how do they get fired? There you go. She was able to free herself, if anybody was concerned, but that about sums up the American train system right there in 2 tweets. If they just would have put the skeleton emoji in that tweet, it would have been even better. Masterpiece. But you can create conversations with responsiveness. This is Umpqua Bank. They're a bank based in the Pacific Northwest. They have hundreds of branches. And not that many people go to bank branches now, but when they do, they usually have some sort of more complex banking transaction on their mind. And in every single branch of Umpqua, they have a silver kind of old-timey phone like that, and above the phone is a sign that says, "Let's talk." Now, you might not be able to see it in the back, but right there, if you press one button, number 8, that phone goes directly to the president of the bank, not the president of the branch, the president of the entire bank. He gets about 5 calls a week. 4 of them are people like, I thought this was fake. Sorry for bothering you. So it's not about actually getting phone calls, but it's about proving that you're so responsive, so customer forward, that you'll give people the opportunity to make that phone call. And that's a story that guests will tell. Third type of talk trigger is talkable usefulness. Many of you, I'm sure, are familiar with the Cosmopolitan. It's burst on the scene here in Vegas a few years ago. It's done very, very well. Many people, including probably folks at the Cosmopolitan, believe that their talk trigger is the famous chandelier bar at the Cosmopolitan. Very lovely multi-story bar with all kinds of crystal ornaments. And if you go on Instagram or WhatsApp or any sort of social media, you'll see picture after picture after picture taken at the chandelier bar. It's one of the most photographed places in Las Vegas. 558 TripAdvisor reviews as of last night mention chandelier bar. So you think, oh, that must be the talk trigger. It's actually not. It's actually not. The real talk trigger at the Cosmopolitan is with 1,001 TripAdvisor reviews, so almost twice as many reviews. Anybody know what it is? Anybody guess? Nope, not the shoe. That's a good guess. Balconies. Balcony. The only place on the Strip with a balcony. 1,001 reviews, almost twice as many as the Champagne Bar. Why? Because the balcony is A, unusual and talkable, but B, it's useful. You can sit outside. Talkable usefulness. The fourth one is talkable empathy. Certainly relevant having this one in the presentation. Here, Vegas strong. I'll tell you, empathy wouldn't have been in this presentation 3 years ago. It wouldn't. Because I'm old enough, and I think pretty much everybody here is old enough to remember a time, not that long ago, when treating players and guests with empathy, with humanity, with caring, with kindness, that was the default state. That's just how we behaved. But I think it's fair to say that today things are a little different. In business, in life, certainly in politics, at least in this country, I think we're in an era of empathy deficit. So today, when you actually do treat your guests and your players with kindness and compassion and warmth and humanity, it actually stands out like it didn't used to. So now it's a real opportunity like it never used to be. I live in Bloomington, Indiana now, and I have a buddy there, his name's Chris Rund. Chris is a graphic designer, and maybe because of that, or maybe he's just a fool, or both, I don't know. He has all white carpet in his house. Whole house, white carpet. Which, unless you are Jay-Z, is a terrible idea, and there's no point to it. He's not a rapper. He lives in Indiana. Chris also has a cat. This is not Chris's cat. This is a stock photo of a cat. Who has a cat here? I'm just curious. Just raise your hand if you have a cat. Wow. Raise your hand if you have a cat. Let me just double check this. Like 15 people. The gaming industry hates cats, is my... Really? 15 people. Well, you guys all know what a cat is, though, right? I don't have to... Because I could skip this section. Because everybody's clear on how cats work, though, at least? I have a cat. Although the better way to say that is, I live in a home where a cat also lives. Because you don't really own a cat the same way that you would own a dog or a bird or a fish or a snake. Because cats, it's a roommate situation with cats. They don't care about us at all. Because every cat in the world, my cat, Chris's cat, the 15 of you that have a cat, does this thing. So they don't walk, they strut. So they're kind of strutting along, right? And their tail's wagging. And then, for no reason at all, they're just vomits everywhere. And then, like nothing even happened. Back the other way. You should do something about that. Right? It's a known feature of cats. That's just how cats are. Why do we tolerate it? I have no idea. They're not that great, but that's the way it works. So my cat, your cat, Chris's cat, doing this random vomiting exercise. As I mentioned, Chris has all white carpet. So this is staining his carpet. So Chris feeds his cat Meow Mix brand cat food. He decides to send an email to the Meow Mix Corporation asking them to only make the food in neutral colors so it won't stain his carpet. And guess what he heard back? Nothing. Because that's a ridiculous and insane email to send. But Chris is that guy. So now he's double mad. He's mad about the carpet, and he's mad that they wouldn't answer my email. So he goes to Facebook, where they have 450,000 fans. And he leaves this note. Listen.
Dear Meow Mix, cats throw up pretty regularly. I figured you guys would realize this, being cat experts and all. With this in mind, why do you insist on putting dyes in your products that cause ruined carpets, furniture, etc.? You know, when Kitty spews her half-digested meow yuck all over the place. Seriously, my cat doesn't give a what your product looks like in a bowl, and neither do I. What would be helpful and appreciated by legions of cat owners, I'm guessing, is if you take the worthless dyes out of your product and save us all a lot of frustration and ruined fabrics.
Chris is upset, clearly. Meow Mix decides to answer him. Again, this is in public on their Facebook page. Here's what they said, word for word.
Hi, Chris. All Meow Mix products are made with nutritious quality ingredients that meet the standards and specifications of the U.S. Department of Agriculture, USDA, Association of American Feed Control Officials, AAFCO, and the Food and Drug Administration, FDA. If you have further questions, our Consumer Affairs team will be able to help you. You can reach them at 1-877-MEOWMIX, 877-636-9649, or by visiting meowmix.com and clicking the Contact Us link at the bottom of the page.
Raise your hand if you now feel better about the Meow Mix Corporation. Anybody? They made a classic mistake. They tried to information the customer to death. They tried to factualize it. Every time you're interacting with a guest, doesn't matter, Facebook, email, face-to-face, hostage note, whatever, every time, it's always, always, always emotion first, information second. Because many times they don't care about the information at all. They only care about the emotion. Now, conversely, there's a business called Wink. And Wink is a frozen dessert concoction. You might find it next to the regular ice cream. It's sold in the cardboard pint containers, which are so familiar here in the States. But Wink is different from most ice cream because it's fat-free, soy-free, egg-free, gluten-free, sugar-free. It's pleasure-free, which is fine. I mean, some people, that's their diet. I'm totally okay with that. But it's not for everybody, especially if you're expecting it to be something else. They have a Facebook page as well, and had a customer go on their Facebook page whose actual Facebook account name is Random Musings of a Barefoot Libertarian Hippie, which is a red flag, and went on their Facebook page and left this little present.
I just bought this hoping to be able to enjoy some ice cream while on a low-carb diet. Too bad this ice cream, I put it in quotes because it tastes nothing like ice cream other than being cold, is absolutely disgusting. I got the cocoa dough version, and literally licking the freezer burnt ice shavings from inside the freezer would probably taste better than this. It's definitely going back to the store for a refund.
didn't like it at all. did not care for it. When we get complaints from guests that are that negative, the natural human reaction is to just delete that and walk away, because you think, I don't want to get involved in this. This is crazy time. But you should get involved, because what this really is an opportunity to be talkably empathetic, to treat people in a way that goes beyond how they expect to be treated in these times. Here's how Wink handled it. Again, this is word for word on their Facebook page in public.
Hey, we're sorry to hear this, Random Musings. While Wink is definitely not ice cream, we do aim for an ice cream-like experience. The creator of Wink is a 25-year-old named Gabe who has celiac disease and dairy intolerance. We do recommend letting your pint sit out for a few minutes before you dig in. If the store you purchased Wink in gives you trouble with the refund, please let us know. While we hope that everyone will love and enjoy Wink as much as we do, we realize that not everyone will. If we can help, please send us an email to info@winkfrozendesserts.com. And thanks for giving Wink a try.
Raise your hand if you now feel better about the Wink Corporation. Ta-da! Right? It's the exact same situation. Unhappy customer on Facebook in public. One organization tried to information him to death, and the other one used empathy. Every time we can do this. It makes such a huge difference. We just witnessed what a difference it makes. There's plenty of oxygen on the high road. And one of the ways that we can get customers talking about our businesses is by taking that road every single time. Generosity, responsiveness, usefulness, and empathy. The best way to grow your business is to let your customers do it for you. Certainly cost effective, and doesn't have to be difficult, as we've seen here this morning. But let's remember this. Competency doesn't create conversation. This idea that if we just run a good casino, if we just run a good business, people will talk about us, that's not the way the world works. You don't talk about good. Why would you expect your customers to talk about good? We talk about something that is unexpected, not something that is adequate. Loyalty programs, and this is research from the Journal of Hospitality and Travel, loyalty programs have no impact on casino word of mouth. None. They have an impact on player retention, but they don't get you new players. They help you keep the ones you've already earned, which is not unimportant and not insignificant, trust me. But a loyalty program is not a word-of-mouth strategy. It has no impact. Let's remember that same is lame. If somebody else is already doing it, the conversation is going to be about that because they were first. We have to have, each and every one of us, the courage to do one thing different in our operations. One thing that the guest doesn't expect. One little thing. And when you do that, it gives them a story to tell. If you give them a consistent story to tell, they will tell it to their friends. They will tell it to the world in social media. They will tell it over and over and over every single day, like all the examples we've seen here this morning. I cannot wait to see what you come up with for your talk trigger next. Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it. Cheers. Thank you. Hope you guys have a great G2E.